Unit conversions is the topic of this video, so please use the page that we had. It was page 5 in the packet that I gave you guys in the Unit 2 Simplifying Linear Expressions packet that you should be looking at for page 5, and we'll be using this app to help you guys solve your problems. Okay, so what I wanted to do was ensure that before we start having you guys write so much, that we give you guys a simpler way to understand how to solve the problems. So one thing that we want to learn is at the top we have a few important things that you guys want to know about. The first thing is this method, okay, that we're calling the from to method. Okay, in this method you want to know what you're moving from and what you're changing into. Okay, so that's the first part. That's what this is all about. So we want to look at what we're changing into. So if I look at an example of a problem, let's see this one. This says let's turn 100 millimeters into inches. Okay, so this is what you guys want to learn how to do here. Well, in this case, the from unit would be the millimeters, because that's what I'm starting with. Okay, and I want to go from millimeters into inches. So we would say the to unit is inches, right? I'm turning into inches, okay? The next step you would do is you would try to find the rule that connects those two. And every now and then for this one, if we look for millimeters and inches, you'll see there is no equation here that connects millimeters and inches. We have millimeters and centimeters, and we have centimeters and inches over here, right? So the thing that you want to watch out for is that we're looking in the right place every time. And so this one says that we need to go from millimeters to inches, but we don't have this equation. So that means we'll have to do a middle step first. So in this case, we'll go from millimeters into centimeters. Okay? So one thing that we want to do is that we want to make sure when we do our step 3, which is build the fraction, okay, we want to arrange the fraction so that the from unit cancels out. And what that means is that the from unit has to be the denominator of the fraction, okay? And the to unit has to be on top. So since I'm going from millimeters into centimeters, that means I need millimeters on bottom and centimeters on top. So notice there's only one option that has centimeters, so I have to choose this one. And then now I'd go look to see what's the relationship between millimeters and centimeters. And we should see it's this one right here, okay? So since it says 10 millimeters, right, that means 10 millimeters goes here. Okay, so notice these two relationships, these two quantities are equal. And so if I divide them and multiply them by this value, we haven't changed its value, right? We're just changing the way it looks, right? So we're just changing its units that we're measuring it in, okay? So once you put these two things in, you hit check fraction, and it'll tell you correct if you chose incorrectly. And then it'll show you what you would write if you were going to write this down today. Okay? If you were writing this down, you would write this down into your notebook, and then we'd have to do the next step. The next step is to go from centimeters now into inches. And so now we would look over here for the one unit that relates centimeters and inches. And we see a couple different places where we see that. Okay? Well, we know the centimeters have to go on bottom. And if I look at this example right here, this is what I want to use, okay? So we'll put 2.54 centimeters on bottom, and then on top has to be 1 inch. So don't forget, the red unit that we have here in this step, this unit always has to appear in the denominator. And the unit that we're turning into always has to appear in the numerator. Okay, and notice that both of these values should come from the same equation. Okay, so once you get that, you hit check fraction, and it will multiply this out for you so you can see what happens. Okay, so by doing this calculation, we would get 3.937 inches, and this is what you would have here. Okay, now let's move to the next one. So actually, you guys can go write this down on your notebook into your worksheet so that we can use this expression to understand this is what you guys want to write to be able to solve this. Okay. So now let's do this next one. It says convert 32 years into hours. Well, notice there is no explanation between hours and years. We could do from years into days, and then we could do days into hours. And so we'll have to do 2 steps. I'm going from years. And so that means on bottom, we need to have the year. Since we're going into days, what goes on top is days. And now I press check fraction, and we have the correct answer. So now for this one, we have to now choose the days, okay? And tell me, where should the days be? Should that be on top or on the bottom? Should it be the denominator or should it be the numerator? Okay, well, we're going to go look right now. What's the relationship between days and hours? It's right here, okay? So that means on bottom, I will need to have 1 day, because again, the from unit should always be on the denominator. Okay, and the unit I'm turning into, which is 24 hours, I want to have that on top. So I wouldn't choose 1 hour, because there's not 1 hour per day. Notice again that these two things are equal, right? 24 hours equals 1 day, and that's why this is okay for us to do. So you can see that this is 280,300 hours. So this would be the best way to get number 2 done. Okay, for number 3, we can see we want to go from millimeters into meters. So to make this happen, which should be on the denominator? Which units do I want? We want millimeters, right? The unit we go from, the main lesson, the main part of this lesson that I want you guys to see is that whatever unit I'm converting from should be the denominator of the fraction that I'm looking at here, okay? So in this case, I have to choose between 1,000 or 10. So which one do I choose? Well, this means we're going to have to go look through our table, and we're going to see if we can find a relationship between millimeters and meters. And if you look right here, we see that we have 1,000 millimeters equal 1 meter, okay? And that's where milli, like meal in Spanish, means 1,000. So it's kind of good to know that little word. That root helps you figure it out. So if 1,000 millimeters equals 1 meter, which one should I put on bottom? The 1,000 millimeters, yes? And then on top will be the 1 meter. And then you can check your fraction to see if you did this correctly. And it says correct, so we can move on to the next step. The next step is to convert from meters into kilometers. So we'll look up here to see if we can find a relationship between meters and kilometers. Do you guys see one anywhere? Okay, we have this one right here. 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. Well, since I'm going from meters, the 1,000 meters has to be on bottom, and the 1 kilometer goes on top. Okay, the top should be the numerator again, and the denominator should be 1,000 meters, right? Again, because the from unit always goes on the bottom. So if we check this, we see we got it correct, and we have a number that shows us this is a little bit more than 1% of a kilometer. Now we can move to the next problem, okay, number 4. This one we did in class 2, so I'm mainly doing this especially for students that were out today. So we're going to convert from seconds into minutes, right? So I will have to go look up here at this table. What's the relationship between seconds and minutes? Do we see this? Well, we see 60 seconds is 1 minute, right? So since I'm going from seconds, I have to have the seconds on bottom. And because we're going into minutes, the 1 minute should be on top. And that means we're going to go here, hit check fraction, and we have done that correctly. Now we want to go from minutes into hours. So this one is going to have quite a lot of middle steps to get this process done. Well, the relationship between minutes and hours, as we know, is 60 minutes is in 1 hour. So I'll put the minutes on bottom again because I'm going from minutes into hours. So the hours go on top. And again, because 1 hour equals 60 minutes, this is what we should have. We check it, and we see we did it correctly. So now we go from hours into days. Okay, this might be a good time to pause the video and check to see if you're doing this correctly so that you don't feel clueless. And I'm hoping you identified this equation. Since we're going from hours, I should have on bottom 24 hours. On the denominator, 24 hours. And on the numerator, we should have the value for days, which is 1 day. If we hit check fraction, you can see we're pretty good. This is kind of a lot of writing, and this is kind of what happens when you take chemistry. You'll end up writing these type of expressions all the time. Now we have to go from days into years. Well, we know that there's 365 days in a year, so what goes on bottom, 1 year or 365 days? Well, we're going from days. So again, I'm going to say this again. From should be on the denominator. So we'll put the days here and the year right there. And if we check fraction, we can see that by multiplying everything out, we end up getting this value right here. Okay? So the main thing I'm trying to train you guys on through this video is that we know what number to put on the denominator and what to put on the top. I'm trying to take away from the equation all the work that you would have to write. And eventually you will have to write it. But we're just not going to start out that way because I think it'll be a little more clear to you guys what process is happening if you don't get carried up writing everything down so much, okay? So we're gonna go from inches to centimeters, and I see I have this one right here. So again, I'm going from inches, so the inches should be on bottom, and because it's 2.5 centimeters, I'll put that on top. If we hit check fraction, we see we have the first part. Now we want to go from centimeters into meters. So I find my relationship between centimeters and meters. Do you guys see that here anywhere? Okay. If you guys have your packet, you guys should be able to look through those, but there's some numbers up here too. So you have 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. And so what I should have on bottom is the 100 centimeters, right? Because we're going from centimeters. So from is on the bottom. And on top would be the meter, and that is, again, 100 centimeters is 1 meter. So if we check the fraction, we see we're complete with that one also. All right. I'm going to go ahead and say there's an error on number 6. So go ahead and you can skip past that one and just cross that on your sheet for today, and we'll go back and do that in class one time. So this one did get people a little confused, but we have to convert from kilometers into meters, right? So we would look for here and say, okay, 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. So since I'm going from kilometers, kilometers is on the bottom and meters is on top, okay? We check the fraction and we see we have something. Okay, the next thing is to go from hours into minutes. But we know that the hours have to go on bottom, and we know in 1 hour there's 60 minutes. So if we check the fraction, what does it say? What did we do wrong? Okay? Well, again, if we look at this, we know the hours have to be on bottom and the minutes should be on top, right? So it looks like there might be an error in this problem, I believe, because otherwise that really wouldn't have happened, right? Because again, the from should be on bottom, that's the 1 hour, and the 60 minutes would go on top, okay? So there's an error on this problem too on number 7, and I'm sorry about that. In this case, we'll cover that in class also. So number 8 is another one you could try. Number 9, number 10, and we have several other ones that you guys could look through, okay? So I hope you guys can use this to help you guys get through those first ones that you have. And please complete that by Friday so you guys can get your credit, all right?